Group in a report has stated that in the last 45 days, between 1st December 25 to 15 January 26, at least 15 minority Hindus were murdered by persons belonging to the majority Muslims in Bangladesh. Murder of one Hindu every third day. The minority Hindus murdered are Sameer Das and Pralay Chaki on 11 January 26, Joy Mahapatra on 10 January 26, Mithun Sarkar and Sarat Mani Chakrabarti on 6 January 26, Rana Pratap Bairagi on 5th January 26, Khokhan Chandra Das on 31st December 25, Bajendra Biswas on 29 December 25, Amrit Mondal on 24 December 25, Deepu Chandra Das on 18 December 2025, Shant Chandra Das on 12 December 2025, Jogesh Chandra Roy and Subarna Roy on 7 December 2025, and Pratosh Kormakar and Utpal Sarkar on 2nd December 2025. The murdered victims include elderly women like Subarna Roy and youth like 18-year-old Shanta Chandra Das. All the cases of murder were premeditated, often targeting the assets of the victims such as Sameer Das and Shanta Chandra Das, whose auto rickshaws were taken away. A number of murders were committed in a Taliban style by slitting the throats such as of Rana Pratap Bairagi, Shanta Chandra Das, Jogesh Chandra Roy and Subarna Roy. These murders are just tip of the iceberg on other daily acts of violence against Hindus and other minorities across Bangladesh, and they do not make news in the media. The extreme vulnerability of the Hindu minorities in Bangladesh faces a new challenge. Unlike the previous governments, whether the Awami League or the Bangladesh National Party, the interim government led by Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus has been dismissing any religious angles to these attacks, often before inquiry into the murders happens. Dr. Yunus has been building such narrative to dismiss attacks on Hindu minorities as disinformation campaign by India. Chief Advisor Dr. Yunus Mohammed went a step further. On 13 January 2026, he approached the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Mr. Volker Turk, for technical assistance to address disinformation campaigns during elections. The attack on Hindu minorities during the election campaign will be dismissed as disinformation campaign and otherwise friendly election between parties like BNP and Jamaat-I-Islami. This is what I expect would happen. Once election campaigning begins on 22nd January 2026, the minorities, especially the Hindus, will face unprecedented violence because of their religious belief. These acts of violence against Hindu minorities will be dismissed as political violence, as Dr. Yunus had dismissed massive attacks on Hindu minorities in August 12-24 as attacks on Awami League. On 11 January 2026, Chief Observer of the European Union Election Observation Mission in Bangladesh, Ivars Ijab, called for inclusive and participatory election involving all small ethnic communities, religious minority groups and regional affiliates. In the current atmosphere of systematic attacks, the Hindu minorities are unlikely to be able to participate in election unless the interim government recognizes the attack on Hindu minorities because of their religious beliefs and take necessary measures to ensure their inclusive participation. And I believe that the European Union should intervene with the interim government of Bangladesh to ensure the inclusive participation of Hindus and other minorities and further monitor acts of violence against indigenous people, ethnic communities and religious minority groups, including election process. On this issue, I am joined by Suhas Chakma, Director Rights and Risk Analysis Group, who has not been following the Bangladesh issue but producing reports for international agencies to intervene purposefully for the minority, which also include Chakmas there. My question to you, Suhas, is 15 Taliban-style deaths in 45 days and there is no outrage in Western media, and Prime Minister, the interim head of the government, is talking about containing a disinformation campaign against them? Is this some kind of a joke, sir?
There is involvement of the Western government in terms of sanctioning whatever is done by the Yunus government, and the Western press and the media and the national press and the media believes that Dr. Yunus has an image as a Nobel laureate and he cannot perpetrate or allow these acts to be carried out in Bangladesh. So there is some kind of a perception in the Western media, and I think the more problematic approach is, I think, unlike other, as I said, the governments or head of governments, he's taking it personally. And the deaths take place in his own country. They belong to the minorities. And if there is a report in India, he says this is a disinformation campaign. And no one in the Western media in a strong way are reporting about it. So it's very unfortunate. And because it happens because they want Dr. Yunus to succeed. And if you want Dr. Yunus to succeed, then obviously all these kind of killings, etc., in a way for the time being have to be condoned. And in this entire process,
So has
please.
this comes across your report, the consistency of your organization in taking out information, archiving it and putting it across the world. It looks like a slow genocide.
Well, this genocide has been taking place for a long time. It's not only under this government. If you look at the Hindus, as I always say, the Hindu population in 1800 AD was about 1.19 crores, which increased to 1.39 crores. That's basically 20 lakhs in 225 years. And from the partition of India, we had seen how the Enemy Properties Act was enacted. All the assets of the Hindus were seized. Even when the Awami League came to power after independence, those properties were not returned because the properties were essentially at that point of time taken by the Awami League cadres. And when the BNP came to power in 2001, there was massive violence against Hindu minorities. In 2021 itself, there were massive attacks on the Hindus. And for the first time, I think we have seen in the last 50 years, since independence of Bangladesh, here is a government which actually justifies these acts of violence, but because they say these are, political violence, because they support the Awami League. So when the head of the state himself doesn't take cognizance that there is a religious angle to it, it dies there. And there is not a single government except the government of India which is willing to accept or advocate the fact that these are religious-based violence. And when India speaks up because of the presence of the former Prime Minister Hasina in India, they dismiss as a disinformation campaign. But these 15 Hindus who were killed, this is not a disinformation campaign. It's reported in their newspapers.
Sohas, there is a character of the armed forces and security services. Do you think that the character of the armed forces of the Bangladesh has completely changed? Instead of protecting minorities, upholding the constitution, since they are in a position of power right now, and it's not a totally a democratic state anymore, do you think that the character of the Bangladeshi army has changed something on the lines of Pakistan? A complete Islamization of the armed institution, is that correct to say?
No, I think it's 100% correct to say. I think when Prime Minister Hasina was there, she did not allow, because of the relationship with India, this kind of atrocities to take place openly. And therefore the law enforcement agencies at that point of time, we are more or less taking action by identifying the Islamic militants and etc. And now at this point of time, if you look at the conduct of the Bangladesh army and the police, etc., they are completely partisan. There is no rule of law, and Hindus especially, they do not feel secure at all in anywhere. If you look at the patterns of attack, how do they know that this person is a Hindu? So the most of the attacks which are being carried out, they are basically being carried out from the neighborhood or locality who know that this person is a Hindu. So you could target it or you could kill him and get away. So I would say the army has become completely partisan. They don't play any role in terms of law enforcement when it comes to the Hindus. So the Hindus have been basically left to mercy. And there is one particular person, Yogesh Chandra Rai. His son serves in the Rapid Action Battalion, and another son is the police. So now the parents of the police officers, Hindu police officers, if they themselves are not secure, then who could be secure in Bangladesh?
And last question, Suhas, before I let go of you, what does it mean? Will Hindus, Chakmas, Buddhists, tribals, will they get to vote in Bangladesh elections, or they will be herded inside their homes, disenfranchised, both from the electoral process and holding important positions of power in the government, as we saw 6 months ago when there was an audit done by Yunus that how many Hindus were holding posts above the rank of joint secretaries in the government?
Well, I think in this particular case, Hindus, I mean, since Yunus came to power, the Hindus have not basically got any job. But that's not the issue. The issue is, I think the Hindu minorities will not go out to vote, and that's also not the main concern. The main concern is for the Hindus is once the election campaigning starts, there are political violence which are expected. And in the process of political violence, their assets, their properties, their daughters, everything will be unsafe. So it's only not question of who is coming to power. That is basically between the BNP and the Jamaat-I-Islami. That's a foregone conclusion. The Hindus do not have a choice. But I think the bigger problem for them is whether in the next 20 days, basically from 22nd January till 10th of February. I mean, the kind of violence which will be unleashed in the name of political violence, and the Hindus will be evicted. And these small evictions, some sexual assault, unless it's really outrageous, they even do not make the news. So that's the biggest problem. On a daily basis, even today, the Hindus are facing persecution, but nobody will be reporting about it. If you report about it, if you're a journalist, you yourself will be targeted. So who will report about it? And the Hindus are scared to go and document because the Hindu community organizations are not there. So Hindu, Buddha, Christian ঐক্য Parishad, they are also limited by their capacity to operate. So the fear is not participate in the election. I think the fear is more whether you can protect yourself during this election campaign.
Suhas, thank you so much, and I must congratulate you for doing a wonderful job in archiving the atrocities that are taking place against minorities in Bangladesh. So this is all I had on my on point 5, but don't go away because it's time for a short break. And in my last on point, we will talk about the emergence of Islamic NATO.